Hello, and welcome to the super awesome comic review show. I'm Foxy, and kind of a bummer week, you guys. I'm sure you've seen the news, and maybe you've read some of the comics this week. Lots of good stuff on the shelves to make us reminisce about dark things. And let's get right into the darkness. Go to the source. New this week from IDW, from creators Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez, who brought us Lock and Key. We've got Tales from the Darkside, number 1 of 4. Really cool miniseries. Apparently this came to comics because TV executives are ridiculous and didn't think that Joe Hill, son of Stephen King, creator of Lock and Key and writer of Horns, which was turned into that fantastic Daniel Radcliffe movie. Anyway, they passed on a Tales from the Darkside reboot from Mr. Hill. Apparently there was a 3-season treatment he discusses in the back. It had some overarching continuity, but mostly it was standalone episodes like you would expect from Tales from the Darkside, Tales from the Crypt, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, etc. Really cool anthology series. I can't really discuss the themes of this issue without spoiling things, but suffice it to say, if you were a fan of those anthology horror and sci-fi programs of yesteryear, this will be right up your alley. Very cool stuff. Very immediately engaging horror, and strong concept. And you get a little hint of that some of that overarching continuity that would have spilled throughout 3 seasons of Joe Hill's Tales from the Darkside, which we will get distilled into 4 issues. Better than nothing, but hey, I don't know why they're even limiting this to 4 issues. If he's got 3 seasons of ideas, just bring them out, Joe. We're ready. But also exciting, at the back of this, there's an ad for her new Lock and Key content. Lock and Key Small World will be starting up in December, so keep your eyes peeled for that. That's exciting. Also new this week, and also a mega bummer, Descender issue number 12. We, at the end of the second volume of Descender, were introduced to the concept of Tim 21's counterpart, Tim 22, another Tim unit. It's a discussion of mindset versus setting. You know, is it, are you born into a certain way of being, or is it the world you were exposed to? And yeah, at the end of the second volume, Tim 22 seems to, he's at least trying to kill Tim 21 out of jealousy and rage. And in issue 12, we get to see where that stems from abuse to survivor situations in a post-apocalyptic landscape. Tim 22 is broken. Dark times in the Descender universe, but really quality storytelling as usual. They're really batting 1,000 on that one. Also out from Image this week, Lazarus, issue number 22. Also very dark. But there was a revelation at the end of the 4th arc of Lazarus. Turns out Forever has a clone or little sister. You have to assume it's a clone, given that the Carlisle family is involved in the biological sciences and stem cell advanced research and the healing properties that Forever herself has. And I guess that's a really good backup plan if Forever were to go, be taken out during one of these conflicts, like the war they're in with the Hawk family right now. In that eventuality, who's going to lead your army? I guess a backup Forever. So, and that just makes her name even more on the nose. Forever will forever be the Lazarus of the Carlisle family, I guess. And it's imperative that she not know about her own living contingency plan. The levels of subterfuge and manipulation that the Carlisle family puts Forever through, or doesn't expose her to, I guess, but secretly the machinations they have going on to facilitate her control is crazy, man. It's dark times, dark sci-fi, and the war carries on. In the meantime, Forever was horrendously disfigured, lost limbs at the end of the last arc. Will she recover from that? Yeah, you kind of have to imagine that she will. But the war does not take pause while she heals, let us say. And so we see how the family moves forward in her temporary absence, and clearly the child clone of Forever is not quite ready to be picked from the vine and sent into the war zone. Which also, if you think about it and you've been reading Lazarus, kind of brilliant how in the previous arcs when we were presented with what seemed to be flashbacks to Forever's training was actually current timeline training of the young clone of Forever. So what a you gotta reread the whole thing now. Total mindfuck. Brilliant stuff. Greg Rucka and Michael Lark. Everybody's, again, batting 1,000. Also out this week, from DC Comics, Superman #1. I continue to really like Superman, which I've got some sort of cognitive dissonance about that. It's been a long time since I've really enjoyed a Superman comic. Probably not since All-Star Superman from Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. Yeah, it has a lot of potential, and it's going somewhere that Superman books haven't really gone before, because DC traditionally is scared to move a character forward, to let characters have families, be married, etc. Marvel does the same thing, because these are legacy characters, so they want to keep them in some kind of status quo. But this new Superman book is about Superman as a family man with Lois Lane raising a child who also has superpowers. So you get to see this whole passed down lineage of heroism and responsibility, and also from the kid's perspective, a yearning, a desire to be right there at his father's side. Like, how do I get to take part in this whole superhero game, but he's just a kid, so where do they draw the line? And it seems like there's going to be a lot of interesting areas of exploration here, and I look forward to enjoying more Superman. Weird. Also out this week from Marvel, Black Widow #4. Black Widow continues to be awesome. Wade and Samney and Wilson just killing it so hard. And Natasha also killing it in her memories of the past, in the current timeline where she is being manipulated by the Lion into spy games that she would otherwise not be a party to as an Avenger. She's on the run from S.H.I.E.L.D. She's in the crosshairs of her former trainers. The program that made her into an assassin to be feared. And she's just kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And after being attacked in the previous issue, we see her kind of on the mend here and meeting up with a familiar face from her past. So yeah, lots of ghosts from her past, both haunting and helping her in this particular chapter. Also out this week, Low issue #14, the penultimate issue of the third arc of Low. We get both an update on Stell's progress on the surface to try to find the deep space satellite that has come to with news of hopefully an inhabitable planet that is not Earth, the radioactive scorched surface as it is. That doesn't really go to plan, as it never does. And meanwhile, we also get an update on the really hard circumstances that we've been seeing in the depths of the ocean as Tajo is fighting for her life against another betrayer. There is no shortage of betrayers under the sea. Humanity, in its final moments, not so pretty. And yeah, man, so much darkness, betrayal, infighting, and bloodletting. There's a lot of heaviness here as well, continuing the darkness theme of the week. Moving on to original graphic novels that came out this week. This beautiful thing, original graphic novel released from Dark Horse. It's by Neil Gaiman and Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba. How to Talk to Girls at Parties. Super good. It's based on a short story that Neil Gaiman wrote in prose at first, and apparently it's being adapted by John Cameron Mitchell for the screen, famous actor-director of Hedwig and the Angry Inch and Short Bus. So, really highly anticipated film, beautiful comic adaptation. Can't wait to see where they go in the film version with Elle Fanning and Nicole Kidman playing the role of said girls at parties. With original music being composed by Shoo Shoo, Matmos, and the New Pornographers. Kind of ridiculous. 2017, gonna be blessed with this beautiful thing. And gotta say, How to Talk to Girls at Parties, not just full of good advice about how to talk to girls at parties, but also a sci-fi story. These girls at the parties, not necessarily just girls. Also out this week, Sex Criminals Volume 3, Matt and Chip, still brimping it up. Brimping never been so good. And yeah, whoa, other people in the world have these orgasm-oriented special abilities, and they're not all the same ability, and it just keeps getting way bigger. Big world expansion. Can't wait to see where they go in Volume 4. Volume 3 was great, as always. And the back matter on Volume 3, hilarious, as the back matter has been on every volume. Also out this week, and back on the dark theme, Dark Knight, a true Batman story by Paul Dini and Eduardo Rizzo. I spoke at length about this when I read the preview PDF that DC sent out when it was first solicited, but I will reiterate, harrowing, true story, autobiographical tale of Paul Dini when he was brutalized on the street by a couple of ne'er-do-wells. And it's a story of recovery and his PTSD. It's really another hard story. During the production of Mask of the Phantasm, the Batman the Animated Series film, this almost derailed his career and his ability to write superheroic tales as he was dealing with the reality of a lack of heroes in the real world and the hardship that violence on the street actually brings. Good stuff. Really thought-provoking. Last but not least, out this week, Fight Club 2 hardcover, the complete collection, finally here for all you Palahniuk heads. A must. Beautiful art by Cameron Stewart, beautiful covers by David Mack, and a really mind-bending and twisted story from Chuck Palahniuk. Definitely don't want to miss that. And before we go for the week, that's it. That's all I got. But last week, John Morgan was here, and we had an extended discussion about, in memoriam of Darwyn Cooke. We just wanted to let you guys know how we felt about some of his best works and his career in general. John and I have always been big fans of Darwyn's, and it's something that we connected on early on in our own relationship. And yeah, Darwyn's works are some of the ones that we recommend most often and most highly to others, so we thought we should do that for you guys too. And so here's that. John and I have long shared this love for this man, and he passed away recently. It's been a few weeks.
Since we found out, basically his passing came very quickly.
Yeah, they announced he was in a terminal state of cancer.
Basically a very aggressive form of cancer, and they said he was on palliative care, which generally means that they're talking more about comfort than cure. And then essentially the next day we heard about his death. So It obviously, when they did make that announcement, things were already on the downward slide.
Totally. It still came as a shocker, though, and ultimately there's a lot to mourn here because he was one of comics' all-time greatest talents, and He produced some of the best work that's ever been made in comics. He worked on Batman the Animated Series.
He worked on the Batman Beyond.
He was involved in much of DC's successful animation projects, let's just say. So, yeah, he was heavily involved in a lot of what makes DC good. His whole career really just some of the cream of the crop, really. And we just want to shine a light on some of those works.
And talk a little bit about them, I think, because there's a lot about Darwyn Cooke which is really fascinating. One, that he came to comics relatively late. I mean, like, he actually, you can find on the internet stuff that he originally sent to DC. They passed on it, and then he basically had to find a real job. Like, it sounds like he did some advertising before he even was found by Bruce Timm. Mm-hmm. And then he went into animation for a while, and then he came out much later than that and shows up with Batman Ego. And Batman Ego makes a huge name for him, but basically he was unknown at that point. And from there, he goes from Batman Ego to Selina's Big Score.
And Selina's Big Score launched a very successful run of Catwoman, but really the high watermark of it was Darwyn's work on it.
Yeah, very much so.
Selina's Big Score, he wrote and illustrated, but then he carried on to illustrate at least the next, one arc, two arcs?
It was the first arc that he and Brubaker did together, and they both had, obviously, they were both gentlemen who wanted her to be a thief again. They wanted her to have
they were responsible for the reasonable redesign of Catwoman that lasted up until the New 52.
Up until the New 52 showed up.
Unzipped that zipper way too low.
Yeah, exactly. But there was an interesting part of that, because they basically were like, we want her to have a working outfit. And even now, when people approach female characters in superhero comics, they ask a very similar question, like, how is someone going to actually do their job in this outfit? And a lot of that really came from Darwyn Cooke's design. And from there he goes on to, and actually this is really interesting if you think about it, how ambitious the New Frontier is. He's mostly known for the New Frontier.
Yeah, and still, I talk about it all the time here at the shop, and most people don't know about the New Frontier.
It's gigantic. I mean, like, it's he made basically a series that was 400 pages that he entirely wrote and drew. It's both nostalgic and ambitious. He is basically taking, we all know what the Silver Age comic books look like. They're very clean, they, nothing really bad happens, nothing overtly sexual happens, and yet, and they are kind of like, what DC tends to lean on the most. What's interesting though, and Darwyn points this out, is the fact that all of the gentlemen who created that were all veterans of World War II. They all came out of a time frame which, despite the fact of the, the cleanliness of that universe in terms of its outlook, was made by men who really did have to live pretty intense lives. And he actually allows that kind of realism to come into the comics, but at the same point he also kind of respects those cartoonists' ethos.
Yeah, it still has that innocence of the era.
Yeah.
Well, while having the impact of those war situations by including soldiers.
The losers show up, and they were actually at one point drawn by Jack Kirby.
Right.
And also Challengers of the Unknown, also a Jack Kirby comic.
Right, and in both of these scenarios, you're getting servicemen wrapped up into this story, and it ends up being like the launching point for an all-inclusive recontextualization of the Silver Age of DC Comics. So, as they were initially created, they were each kind of separate entities.
And they never would have communicated.
No,
like they would
maybe
now.
Occasionally, eventually you get crossover events and stuff like that. Or, this is a team-up issue where these two heroes meet each other.
Yeah.
But this is looking at it all as one connected universe. That wasn't a concept that was even approached for a much longer time.
At no point would you, Challengers of the Unknown would have even known Green Lantern existed. He allows that to happen, and in addition to that, he allows also things like segregation to show up into it.
Wonder Woman is taller than Superman because she's an Amazon.
And it makes sense.
And that's something that DC Animation actually tried to change when they made the film version.
Did they really?
They were resistant to that. They're like, no, Superman's the tall one because he's the strong guy. And
right.
No, dude, Wonder Woman is an Amazon.
She's going to be much taller.
Yeah, so that was something that they actually had to fight for.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. You think also because it was like an adaptation of his work, they would have just gone with it.
Yeah, no. I mean, they were like, I think they assumed it was a mistake.
It also throws in some of the politics of the time. Like, actually, like the fact that you see Wonder Woman hanging out in a Vietnamese or Indochinese village, is a really interesting moment. It's this part of like, like while the Cold War was going on, America was sort of sending out feelers and trying to manipulate different provinces around the world. And like in the idea that they would have sent Wonder Woman makes sense. And the fact that she would have been pretty turned off by it also makes sense, considering what we think of that character.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's a lot of like sort of heavy concepts in addition to a great deal of optimism.
Somehow he also balances managing to give every character their due.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
a spotlight moment for every character. Some of them get more, like Martian Manhunter has quite a engaging story throughout the thing.
Yeah, Green Lantern does as well.
And then Flash doesn't get as much of a focus, but when the moment that they do focus on him, it's fantastic.
It's just a really great, and it's like it really does feel really engrossing. I reread it, and I really was taken by how just amazing it was. I mean, it really is very fluid, and it really is very absorbing, and for a while I stopped talking to people because I didn't want to stop until I finished it. And so after that he went and wrote the Parker series, or he adapted the Parker series. Yeah,
he adapted the Donald Westlake Parker crime noir series, of which there are more books than he got around to.
No, there's quite a bit more. He basically said at the time he planned on doing 4 to 5. So in terms of comics, there was a long time where if it was an adaptation, it was a very wooden piece of work. Like they would basically, it would be very sort of chunky. Like it would be a lot of sort of like huge captions, and it would try to move through the storyline in like 60 pages if the book was 200. In the case of Darwyn Cooke, like he basically he adapts it the way a director would a movie. Like he makes it his own.
Yeah, he makes it his own. It's his own story.
But it's faithful to the material. And it feels like the material. The great thing about Parker is it's kind of like Darwyn Cooke, really. Darwyn Cooke, like, is said to have had a very no-nonsense approach to the work, to the art of his job. And he didn't like bullshit at all.
No, not a bullshitter.
That's very much how Parker works. Parker is there to do a job. He is there to rob somebody. And God forbid if you get in the way of Parker, you're a dead man. And it doesn't make him evil. And just because he has a code, it doesn't make him good. He is his own sort of creature, where basically you should get out of the way of Parker, essentially, most of the time. And in the case of the Hunter, the first series comes out, and someone made the mistake of stealing a small amount of money from him. Parker will slowly go down the line until someone essentially pays him.
Yeah, and all along the way, they're just like, that's what this is about?
They're always like,
grand?
It's not that much money. He's like, but give it to me.
But it is
like, I'm
my money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's that ethos that really drives all of the books, is that Parker has a code, and he does not deviate from that code.
By any means,
Never.
whatsoever.
Yeah, and then the last one that we were going to talk about that we have yet to was the last one to come out. It might be his last work. I don't know if they're going to posthumously release partial works, because he had a couple more in the works, but if they're not all the way in the can, I have a feeling we're not going to get to see those ones.
Oh yeah, Twilight Children. So he did, basically, it was a book written by Gilbert Hernandez of the Love and Rockets duo, and Darwyn illustrates it. If I was to put Twilight Children anywhere, I would put into Gilbert's B movies.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's actually one of my favorite things.
It's very sci-fi. I've been encapsulating this one. My one-sentence pitch is it's kind of like it's an episode of The Twilight Zone as written by Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Which, is about as accurate as you need to be. It's I think it's a really beautiful book. I definitely think the people who picked it up in single issues probably made a mistake. It makes more sense in trade.
Oh yeah, and that was a confusing episodic read.
The flow of it makes more sense in trade as well, because you were basically kind of tossed into this world that has its own logic, and it's a logic that can only be contained within this world, and you're allowed to live in it, and you're allowed to walk around in it, but from 20 pages every month, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
And the beginning and end have kind of a recursive, circular nature to them too, as far as recontextualizing your understanding of certain things.
So if you maybe gave up on it after the first issue because you're a Darwyn Cooke fan, I say go back and get the trade. I think it's really worth it, and I thought it was an interesting ending to the career that he had going, because I think it pointed out to a direction that I thought would have been really interesting if he'd sort of kept in that route. Absolutely,
yeah. There was an Image limited series that he had in the works. It would have been his first Image series.
It probably would have been amazing. It's interesting, like, I was talking to Foxy about this. Whenever, like, an artist passes, the fact is my regret is a fairly selfish regret. My sympathy is not first to the family like it should be. It's always first to me, like, kind of like, I wanted another Parker book.
We were gonna get at least a couple more Parker books.
Where's his Image series?
Where's the Image?
But
series?
I think what that points to, if I can, defend myself, is the fact that the work was so powerful and so amazing that it's hard to imagine that it's been cut off.
I'm never gonna get over this one. I'm never gonna get over Satoshi Kon's unfinished film that his friend was supposed to finish for him and continues to not.
Satoshi Kon was one of the greats. But I think in the end, the best way, I think, to show respect to such a great artist is to go out, find his work, and if you haven't discovered it yet, you should definitely do so now. Rest in peace, Darwyn Cooke.
And we will be thinking about your work for a very long time as well. Doodles. Well, that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the super awesome comic review show. Thanks again to John for being on 2 weeks in a row now, technically. So, that's it. I'm out of here. As always, I've been the Fox, you've been the audience, and go read some comics. Support your locals. Or, email Astro Zombies. We'll send you stuff too. Bye!